Chapter 8, Episode 9, Medicine God vs. Anders World Council of Experts. June 28, 1148. Wizards were secretly gathered at Sanfleuve Palace at the invitation of Holy Emperor Elizabeth. Theologian Liara Evenius, keeper of the Great Temple Archives. Court apothecary Bruno de Medicis. His son, first-class apothecary Pal de Medicis. First-class apothecary and chief apothecary of Another World Pharmacy, Eleanor Bonnefoy. Falma's direct student, first-class apothecary Emmerich Bauer. Also court veterinarian Josephine Barrier. Elizabeth silenced it in writing and shared Falma's plan, which was kept secret only within the temple. Everyone except Bruno could not hide their excitement, but Josephine gave her honest impressions in a trembling voice. As someone attending medical school, I once doubted that the professor could be a god of medicine. We were taught by the patron deity. Emmerich, who looked up to Falma as his teacher, was also deeply shaken. My patron deity is a god of medicine. I thought my family would suffer from a hereditary disease and be cursed by a god of medicine, but it was the professor who encouraged me and healed my brother. It is hard to develop such a plan surpasses the professor's, but I will critically examine the professor's plan for any mistakes. The professor taught me not to accept the theory of authority without question and that there is no hierarchy in the world of science. Emmerich, in particular, who answered with a pale face, was, along with Falma, the most knowledgeable student in the world about genetic engineering. In less than a minute, his eyes lit up. It's fast, but there are parts that are likely to break. Hurry up. Your Highness, did you say that the professor really destroys the veins irretrievably? Ah, you certainly said that. No, Evenius. Elizabeth confirmed, and Liara Evenius nodded as well when prompted. Emmerich mused with a serious expression. Am I missing something? The genetic manipulation that the professor is going to perform is not irreversible. I was thinking the same thing. You can undo it. Pal followed him as if he had been told first. Pal didn't move his hands like Emmerich did in experiments, so he didn't understand the details, but since he was writing a textbook with Falma, he fully understood the basics. A little later, Ellen and Josephine also made a surprised face. Surely it is not as simple as a professor who can manipulate genes throughout the body, but there is still a mechanism to generate divine power locally, and it's a technology we can use. I think there is a way out. Quote. Emmerich, looking at Pale's and Bruno's complexions, suspected something was wrong and pointed out the naive part of Falma's plan. How did you do that? The Holy Emperor, who seemed convinced of the incomprehensibilities, boldly put up a line of defense. Pal handed Emmerich the explanation, so Emmerich stood up and explained. For example, just as we are currently culturing His Holiness skin cells in vitro, we will cultivate our own lymphocytes, osteoblasts, skin cells, etc. In vitro, repair the destroyed genes with genetic recombination technology, and generate our own. If you give it back to your body, it is easy to gain divine power even if it is small. There are some divine arts that can be used even with a small amount of divine power. With this as a support, you can also revive divine pharmacy and forbidden arts. Emmerich was almost at the same level as Falma, to the point where he was able to make technical plans accompanied by the ability to execute them. Above all, Falma raised him that way. Also, it's strange, but what will happen to the destruction of the divine art gene group? Realistically and with less effort, it is possible to mutate the highly regulated genes and stop the function of the divine art gene group. I excuse my layman's opinion. But even if you mess with the gene sequence, if the DNA double strand is broken, it will lead to the instability of the chromosome, and the professor does not do such a thing in clinical practice. Follow the same process that happens in communization? Probably bluffing. When the palate is cut and disposed of. I don't think Falma Kuhn would do something like that. Ellen came to Falma's defense. You're the brother who would do something like that, aren't you? Pal and Ellen argued about who knew more about Falma. When Elizabeth cleared her throat, they paused as they remembered being in the presence of the Holy Emperor. I don't know how difficult it is, but the divine power stored in the crystal stone does not diminish. You can also use the divine power of the crystal stone to perform divine arts. One day, even if all the nobles there were suddenly destroyed, the number of people who would try to attain divine power would be endless. You may be able to foresee the possibilities involved, but to an untrained eye, it looks that way. Liara Avenius apologetically adds her opinion as a theologian. There is also divine power in the mysterious drug substances left behind in various parts of the world. I do not believe it is possible to explain the collapse of the... It is unclear whether Falma did not notice it or did not dare to mention it. On this premise, Falma's plan fails. There is no need for him to stab the tomb guard. You shouldn't think logically about things that don't make sense. Pal also adds a view from the theological side. Falma is an expert in pharmacy, but he is an amateur when it comes to divine arts and divine power, he said. Bruno declined. However, Master, Falma believes that the world is collapsing because of the existence of divine arts and sorcery. Ellen says in trouble. She took Falma's words so seriously that she could not say anything in shock. If you can revive the divine power with a trick, you cannot say that it is gone. The fact that it does not exist at this time does not mean that the power is gone. You should think about other ways. Parl explains to everyone while answering Ellen. It's going to be interesting. After all, the experts in the group say otherwise. Has his plan failed, or is it within the realm of conjecture? Well, in any case, reducing all nobles to commoners is a pretty big deal. Prepare, as Falma expected, to dissolve the aristocratic system and move to a new system within 5 years without confusion. The best plan is to immediately present a final solution superior to his with Falma's method. The divine power will not disappear. We must think about another solution to repair the collapse of the world. Elizabeth confronts her with a provocative tone. It's a battle of wits with the medicine god. After saying it comfortably, she gave Pell a casual glance. By the way, in a world without divine arts, on what basis would the emperor be elected? Is it a popular vote? If that is the case, then I would be happy to be exempted from the role. Pell, who was expected to become the next emperor, feels as if a weight has been lifted from his shoulders. I want to continue being a pharmacist. The others present except Bruno didn't understand what Pell was saying, so they looked at each other. Perhaps the justification of protecting subjects from evil spirits and the legitimacy of government is crumbling, and the emperor himself may no longer be needed. The present emperor began to say such unscrupulous things, so Bruno made a sour face. In this case, the court pharmacy will also be abolished. Isn't there a power that can negate divine power and magic power? For example, it's like antimatter versus matter. Emmerich, holding his head, cut in from a new page. Why not create antimatter? Pal had an epiphany. And Pal has reached the stage of full use of material creation and material destruction. It is also a great conflict for him to have to let go of the divine arts he has mastered so far. If you don't use anti-divine power, anti-magic power, you will end up using divine power to create antimatter. I'm sorry. Anti-god powers don't surpass human wisdom. Thought Pal too. I don't believe what will happen today. Each of you should come up with a plan. Also, I want you to treat Falma with the same attitude as before. So please don't treat me like an enemy. Hostility? The professor saved my life and is a teacher I respect. On the contrary, I am grateful for the opportunity to explore divine arts. Emmerich declares without hesitation. The feelings of this young man to repay Falma's kindness are too strong, and he is a bit grumpy. The Holy Emperor smiled gently, as if surprised by this heat. Are you a lifesaver again? How many lives has he connected since he came to this world? At least the world ended with an explosive epidemic of the Black Death, he said. No, the world is exaggerating. Pal quietly soaked in Emmerich's words. The conventional method would have been to burn down the entire Black Death-affected city and wipe out the infected as well. At the time, it bordered on a miracle that Falma brought in the antibacterial drug levofloxacin, which caused almost the fewest deaths. Sure. The medicine god appeared a year before the plague spread and disappeared after he defeated the plague and had no more power. He has been around for a long time and he is a living legend. This was the end of the first refutation conference, which was held in absolute secrecy. As everyone left their seats and left in a hurry, Ellen finally knelt down in front of Elizabeth and made a statement. From my perspective as the High Priest of His Holiness, I think what you just said makes sense, and I hope it does. Are you saying that Falmouth should remain in this world for a long time? Yes. Maybe it's because he's busy or because he's worried about the future. Ellen's lips were pressed tightly together, but she expressed her thoughts tremulously. I wonder if it's true. This time, just because I talked to him, there were many mistakes in his plan. I think you will. Ellen wanted to tell him that Falmouth's plans were not wrong, but that his actions so far were not unusual. I think he knew there was a way out, but he still said it as a last resort. Maybe he just wanted to die the way he wanted. In the end, I want him to do what he pleases. We can be the ones who cornered him. That's right. I told you I gave it to you. Ellen could not hold back her feelings, bowed and withdrew. July 5, 1148. Falmouth, who had arrived on the new continent for the third time, presented Malene with the frozen water orb spell he had brought with him, still sealed to fit her hand. This cursed weapon was sunk to the bottom of a lake in the kingdom of Nedale and continued to attract murky water and evil spirits. When the sky was clear, a group of Myraka tribes gathered on a white beach and a total of more than 100 ancestors. She received the spell with great care while many people and spirits watched. Falmouth looked at the horns and became concerned. Is it okay to have so many galleries? Evil spirits may appear. At least the children should go home. What? Don't worry about it. Evil spirits won't come out. When the unsealed rotten water ball fell into Malene's hands, it began to filter out Malene's magic power and produce pure water. Falmouth was surprised by the transformation, but Malene remained calm. Amazing, purified. Look. After all, what you call a spell on this continent is not evil. Let's call it Makuta, White Spring. Malene proudly holds it out to Falmouth. The Mylaka children rejoiced and began to play in the water. Don't drop it in the sea and lose it. Even though they don't understand each other's language, ever since Falmouth cleaned the lake they have been attached to children. There will be no more evil things on this continent where ancestral spirits are carefully remembered. Really? N equals 2, but for now. Falmouth honestly agreed. Malene's prediction was correct. There seemed to be no problem in bringing the magic weapon to the new continent, so it was decided that Falmouth would bring the magic weapon little by little. It is a little more than a month until the dark eclipse. I would like to reduce the number of spells even a little. Can I bring them back? In particular, I wanted to get rid of the curse around the Holy Land where the Hook's equipment exists. It's hard to say if the absence of evil spirits in the area of the Holy Land has any advantage, but when the Grave Guardian appeared, the evil spirits accompanied him. In this case, in a scene that might turn out to be a direct confrontation with the Tomb Guard, it is best to eliminate the cause for concern. Sure. You can bring it all at once. It would be nice to have a cursed weapon that would be welcome. I can't always have it. It seems he brought as many Malenes as he could and welcomed them. There's a limit to what I can bring, but I think I'll try a few at a time. Only Falmouth, who could travel faster than a plane between continents, could carry the curse. It would take about a month for other Divine Arts users to load it onto a ship and bring it in. And not only would it take about a month, but the large amount of cursed weapons loaded with magic would also soon attract evil spirits as the magical power interacted. Transform into a device. In this case, safe travel is not possible. You will soon run into trouble. Then, if the Myraka tribe is on board, we can deal with it even if the spirit rages. There should be no problem. Malene seems to come up with one idea after another. It might be better not to travel between continents at the same time. Falmouth has to take care of one thing when trade ships come and go with the Sanfluiv Empire. Is something wrong? Falma speculated that with Maline's knowledge, he probably would not be able to see the downside of increasing the flow of people. Falma, who has seen the history of humanity on Earth, can predict this. Yes. It seems that they did not bring in or take out any infectious diseases because they were not in the hospital. Also, I tested Jean-San and others who came here. Since recorded history, the movement of people has always been accompanied by the movement of infectious diseases. Since the birth of mankind, infectious diseases have been inseparable from mankind. Infectious diseases spread when people move. Looking back at Earth's history, smallpox was introduced from Syria to the Roman Empire, malaria from Africa to Europe, and plague from Mongolia to Europe. After Columbus reached the Americas, smallpox wiped out an indigenous island he named Hispaniola. It carried smallpox, measles, chickenpox, and mumps from Europe to the Americas and caused a severe pandemic in the Aztec Empire. Syphilis was introduced into Europe from the Americas. Unlike the global world, which eradicated smallpox from the world with a vaccine in 1980 and continues to strive for infection control as a global effort, this world preserves all infectious diseases. Almost certainly, bacteria and viruses will slip through the Marseille port quarantine. This is because Marseille quarantine facilities cannot detect viral infections or unknown infectious diseases. Make vaccination of travelers against smallpox, measles, rubella, malaria, plague, chickenpox, tetanus and other vaccines mandatory and control immigration. I don't think that's enough. When Falma spoke about the horror of contagious diseases, Maline folded her arms and groaned. If you are the one who eradicated the schistosomiasis that ravaged this country in an instant, then you should be prepared. Yes, let's prevent what can be prevented. To borrow the words of Maline, even if you can't see bacteria and viruses, that doesn't mean they don't exist. Okay. Is there any medication to prevent it? I can't deal with everything, but I have some. Thanks to the knowledge and technology of the global world, the benefits of its clinical application in humans, and the accumulation of its evidence of efficacy, the lives of many people in this world are also being protected. Falma remembers the people who developed the cowpox vaccination method and made it known to the world. Benjamin Gasty vaccinated his wife and children with cowpox, and Edward Jenner vaccinated his servant's son with cowpox and then intentionally vaccinated with smallpox more than 20 times. From the point of view of Falma, who lives in the present, it is not a good story. It is a story that makes you want to turn a blind eye to it. In 1947, the Nuremberg Protocol for Clinical Research Involving Human Subjects was enacted as part of the trial of physicians for war crimes during World War II, requiring informed consent, voluntary participation, and scientific investigation. It was established to evaluate and provide benefits to participants. In today's global world, the development of new drugs and new treatments has been confirmed by clinical trials for safety and efficacy, and obtained accordingly from many subjects who have voluntarily given their informed consent based on the data. Superiority over previous drugs is also studied, and only a small number of drugs are approved and released into the world, even after the product is manufactured. Data is collected under the guise of post-marketing surveillance to confirm efficacy and safety and to gather new information on side effects that could not be obtained in clinical trials. Therefore, if you look at package inserts of drugs year after year, you will find more and more information about their effects and side effects. There are many drugs that have quietly disappeared after being re-evaluated and having their marketing authorization revoked or sales stopped because they were found to be inadequate or ineffective. Falma reflected on the history of pharmaceuticals while talking briefly with Maline about what was happening in the Earth world. Well, how shall I put it? I am sorry to receive not only the achievements of your world which were obtained through huge sacrifices and not through bloodshed. I would like to thank the spirits of the developers and test participants. Because we belong to different races, we don't think everything is safe, but we are studying how medicine should be suitable for people in this world. While thinking about such things, I told the Mylocket tribe that travelers must receive a mixed vaccine in a quarantine period to prevent the epidemic of infectious diseases. Preparations for vaccine production had already been completed after the plague epidemic, and several production facilities were set up at the Marseille plant. It's not that you don't have to worry if you are prepared, but you should worry less. At the end of July, Falma transported the spells through the Holy Kingdom to the Miraka tribe to render them harmless, and at the same time, inoculations began among those involved in the trade. The day of the dark eclipse, believed to occur around August 18th, is approaching by the moment. Falma issued orders to Solomon through the Holy Emperor to withdraw the priests from the Holy Land and establish a restricted area. Even for the ordinary engineers who cultivated the Holy Emperor's cells, I made a plan to manage the cells and ordered them to be unmanned around August 18th just in case, hoping that the world will last beyond that. Falma is still standing in the other world pharmacy today, living his daily life with perfect preparations.